Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep on a topic many find really personal. It's the psychology behind obesity. Like what's really going on beneath the surface.
It is deeply personal.
We're using psychological factors in obesity from Weight Matters.
Okay.
And to make it even more real, we've got an expert who works with people dealing with these challenges every day. So it's not just theory, this is the real deal.
Absolutely, yeah. It's about going beyond the simple explanations.
Yeah, exactly. It's like growing up, my grandma was all about, you gotta finish your plate, full or not. And looking back, I wonder if that messed up my own hunger cues.
That's a classic example of what we call family food scripts.
Food scripts, like, what, some kind of rule book we inherit?
Yeah, think of them as those unwritten guidelines we pick up from family, shaping how we think and act around food, passed down through generations sometimes.
So like a family recipe, but for eating habits. Some are great, some, well.
Exactly. Some lead to healthy meals, others maybe not so much. Like, if food was your comfort during stress as a kid, you might turn to it as an adult when things get tough.
Emotional eating, I get that. Makes social situations tricky too, right? It's like battling this internal script all the time.
Absolutely, yeah. It can be super challenging.
Are there certain types of these food scripts that are like extra powerful?
Definitely. Using food as reward or punishment, attaching guilt to certain foods, even how families gather for meals, all of these, contribute.
Wow, it's amazing how much we pick up without realizing it. But then there's the whole like rules and rebellion thing. Our source talks about how childhood restrictions around food, that can really stick with you. Like, I was the kid who'd refuse to clean my plate, little rebel.
That's a power struggle.
Yeah.
Some structure's good, but being too controlling, it can backfire big time.
Yeah.
Imagine a kid constantly told, no dessert till you finish your veggies. What happens?
They hate vegetables. Dessert becomes like the forbidden treasure.
Exactly. And later, this can turn into problems with dieting as adults. Think about it. If someone grew up feeling controlled around food, they might unconsciously resist any restrictions, even if it's self-imposed.
It's like their inner kids still staging a rebellion even against their own diet plans.
That's exactly it. It's why understanding the psychology is so important. It's not just about willpower. It's deeper than that.
It's like trying to rewrite a script, but those old lines keep popping up.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's shift gears a bit. Body image. This is huge.
Oh, yeah, big time.
And our source really emphasizes how powerful early experiences are in shaping that.
I think everyone has at least one memory from childhood that like messed with their body image, good or bad. I remember being teased about my height in elementary school. It made me so self-conscious.
Yeah.
For years.
It's incredible how strong those early messages can be, especially with body image. Think about name calling from family, peers, media. Each comment, each little dig, it chips away at a kid's self-esteem.
And it's not just how we look, right? It's like believing we're worthy or unworthy because of our bodies, like a deep down belief.
Exactly. And those beliefs like I'm fat, I'm ugly, those can affect everything, including how we relate to food. It's a cycle, a really tough one. Imagine someone's constantly fighting those thoughts, I'm not good enough. They might turn to food for comfort, which, yeah, it eases the pain for a bit. But then they gain weight, and it just reinforces those negative beliefs, leads to more self-criticism and, well, probably more overeating.
It's like a vicious cycle, driven by those insecurities. It's sad someone might want to be healthier, but their own self-image holds them back.
Exactly. And that's where understanding the psychology is key, right? We need to address those emotional wounds to break free from those patterns.
It makes you wonder, are there specific things that work, like therapies or something, to help people rewrite those negative scripts? Get a better relationship with their bodies, I mean.
Oh, absolutely. Therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, can be really effective. CBT focuses on changing negative thought patterns and giving people tools to manage emotional eating. So you learn to challenge those deep-seated beliefs and replace them with something healthier, more realistic.
So it's like retraining your brain, learning new habits.
Yeah, you got it. Now, we've talked about control, but the opposite, neglect, that can also have a huge impact on someone's relationship with food. The source talks about how parental neglect, whether it's intentional or not, it can leave a real void in a child's life.
It's interesting because we think of neglect as something really extreme, right? But it can be subtle too, like parents who are always working or just don't have the skills to give emotional support. like you said, intentional or not.
Right, exactly. It's not always about bad intentions. Sometimes it's just not being tuned into a kid's emotional needs.
Yeah.
And the impact can be just as bad.
It's like the child develops this like psychological hunger. They crave love and attention they're not getting.
Yeah, spot on. And food can become the substitute, right? It fills that void, offers comfort and a feeling of security, almost like they're trying to nourish their hearts and minds with food.
Wow, that's a powerful way to put it. Does the source talk about what happens long term, from that?
For sure. People who experience neglect as kids, they might become overachievers, always trying to get external validation. They strive for perfection in their careers, relationships, even their looks, all to compensate for that lack of love early on.
It's like they're always trying to prove they're worthy.
Precisely. And sadly, that drive can have a downside too. Stress, burnout, maybe even turning to food for comfort again. It's a cycle. Now, this all kind of leads us to a heavier topic, trauma and abuse. The source makes a strong link between these experiences and using food as a coping mechanism.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? When something awful happens, we naturally seek comfort, safety, and food. It gives you that immediate gratification, a way to escape, numb the pain, like when everything else feels out of control.
It's like a temporary Band-Aid, but it doesn't fix the actual wound.
Exactly. And so where's the problem with that, even if it's understandable?
Well, it gets in the way of real healing, right? The source says people who use food this way to cope with trauma, they often have unresolved grief, they push down their emotions, and they end up in this cycle of guilt and shame about their eating habits. They avoid dealing with the root of the pain and just keep seeking solace in food, keeps the cycle going.
So they're stuck, unable to process the trauma, using food as a crutch. I imagine abuse, especially, would really mess with someone's relationship with food and their body.
You're absolutely right. The source goes deep on this, explaining how any kind of abuse, physical, emotional, sexual, it shatters a child's sense of safety. It's like this betrayal of trust that can leave lasting scars.
So how does that show up with food?
Food can become a refuge, a way to numb the pain and shut off those horrible emotions from the abuse, like they're building a wall, physically and emotionally.
It's heartbreaking, someone feeling so vulnerable that they use their body and food as a shield.
And the sad part is, those ways of coping, even though they make sense, they can follow you into adulthood.
It's like those experiences, they leave these deep wounds that affect how they see themselves, their bodies, everything.
Yeah, you got it. And the source points out, even obesity itself could be a defense mechanism. It might be a way to make themselves less appealing to potential abusers, or it could reflect that feeling of, I'm not worthy.
This is all heavy stuff, and I really appreciate you sharing it all in such a sensitive way. So to anyone struggling with obesity, it sounds like understanding the psychology behind it, that's like step one. But then where do you go from there? How do you even begin to address all this?
Well, the source emphasizes treating the whole person, not just the physical symptoms.
So it's more than just diet and exercise. It's about healing those emotional wounds, developing a healthier mindset.
You got it. And while there's no magic solution that works for everyone, therapy can be incredibly powerful.
It's like finding a safe place to unpack all that baggage, right?
Yeah.
And figure out healthier ways to cope. Not just changing what you eat, but getting to the why behind it.
Yeah, exactly. And along with therapy, working with a dietitian can be huge. Someone who can help create a personalized plan that actually works for you, fits your lifestyle, and supports your well-being.
So it's about finding what's sustainable long term.
For sure. And don't forget about lifestyle changes, like getting enough sleep, managing stress, even just moving your body more. Those can have a huge impact, both mentally and physically.
Right. It's about taking care of the whole you.
Exactly. Recognizing that how we eat, it's tied to our emotions, experiences, our whole sense of self. It's all connected.
This has been, wow, a real eye-opener. We covered a lot, and I feel like I get it now. The complexity of obesity. It's so much more than just willpower or good choices. There's this whole psychological layer underneath.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
And, it's important to approach this with empathy and understanding. Obesity, it's often a symptom of deeper stuff, like unhealed wounds and unmet needs.
For sure. So to recap, we talked about those family food scripts, those early patterns that shape how we eat, and how rules and rebellion around food as a kid that can lead to problems with dieting later on.
Yeah, and we went deep on body image, how those negative thoughts about ourselves can really sabotage our efforts to be healthier. It feeds that cycle of shame and self-criticism. Tough stuff.
And maybe the most important part, how experiences like abuse, neglect, trauma, they can lead to low self-worth, using food for comfort, even obesity as a way to protect yourself or, sadly, hold yourself back.
It's been a really insightful journey, a lot to unpack.
Sure.
Hopefully now you have a better grasp on the psychology behind it all.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. Remember those food scripts we talked about? What are yours? How are they shaping your relationship with food and your body image?
That's a great question, something to really reflect on. And if anything we discussed resonated with you, if you're struggling, please know you're not alone. Reach out for support, whether it's therapy, talking to a dietitian, or connecting with people who understand. It can make all the difference.
It's about taking that first step toward healing and having a healthier, happier relationship with yourself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time.